A lot to cover, folks. A lot to cover. Maybe not a lot to cover. Went to the doctor. Not feeling so well still. I got to arrange an appointment with a doctor sooner or later. Get a full on physical. But, kind of realize that me included, that ego's kind of a big thing. And I went into a Discord server and it kind of brought me down a little bit, but that's the way things go. Anytime you try something, one of the things that individuals are going to do, it's part of the animal nature, is to put you down and also resistance is part of nature. No matter who's in power, people are going to resist it, and people are going to resist those that are resisting. And are they going to try to stifle those who are resisting? That is part of human nature. It is what it is. It's not pleasant. It's not nice, but it's the nature of things. I was listening to a song about the kamikaze, and I kind of came up with that it is natural to resist, and Master of Rope, who basically he says same old shit. And yeah, I guess some of it is the same old shit. I always think I can package my shit up something new. But if you listen to this long enough, you will probably get the same old shit. But thinking about politics, resistance is natural. And cognitive dissonance I think, is also perhaps part of human nature. I have an ego. I think that I can change people's opinion, but really and truly, probably not. But there's always that ego part of me saying that I can make a difference when maybe I can't even make a difference in my own life. I mean, I've made some improvement, but I'm still diabetic and I still have high blood pressure. And I am still, basically, I feel like shit every day. I feel like complete crap from the moment I wake up to the moment like I go to bed. I'm like, ugh, I just, I don't feel good. And there are a few moments that I feel good, but for the most part, man, the aches and pains never go away. And it sucks. And I would do almost, if there was a magic pill that made the aches and pains go away at 52 years old, I would definitely take it. But that's just not the case, and that's not something that's going to happen. And I don't know if Master of Rope is going to say anything else, but I was listening to a little bit of Stefan Molyneux, and he basically mentioned that, like, anytime you go against the grain, uh, you take a stand to what you believe is right, individuals will be there to stop you. And there are a lot of people who are actively compliant. There are plenty of people out there that say, hey man, just go along, don't say anything, regardless if it's true, you can't do anything about it, and just basically take your lumps and don't complain. And sometimes that's true. Other times, I don't think it is. But I've come to the conclusion that I have an ego and other people have egos too. And sometimes individuals can see themselves for who they are, and sometimes they can't. And I think it's a realization when you see how you come across to other people, which I don't know if people actually, how often that happens. But I've heard it said when people see themselves on camera, when they first hear their voice, they don't like it and they're very shocked by how they sound and how they come across. Because your voice, when it's recorded, it doesn't sound the way you think it sounds. And that is a bit of a shock. And then when people see themselves when they're angry, they don't realize how they look and how distorted they look. I remember Dennis Prager said he used to film his family, like for having dinner and certain events. And before he filmed his family, like eating, his mother would say to his father, don't, after eating chicken, don't lick your fingers. And he'd always say yes, but he'd always lick his fingers after he ate chicken. And then Dennis decided to film, the family, and the father saw what he looked like licking his fingers after he ate chicken, and he never did it again. So there is something to be said about having a camera on you and observing how you look from that outside, like to a degree, being able to sit and observe yourself. I think there is something to be said about that, and I think that's good for therapy to have a camera or a tape recorder with you. And I think it's good to, sometimes go over things. And ego can be, and I'm someone who struggles with it myself. I have an ego, and I tend to kind of rule with that, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And I'm still struggling with that. That right now is my big struggle. I think it's also my struggle with my diet. I have sometimes no control over my appetites, and that is a weakness of mine. And it's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. And I'm doing a show right now. I told Joe I was, and he just contacted me. And let me see here. I think I'll send him a link, perhaps. Maybe I'll send him the link. Gosh darn it. Gotta send him a link now. Invite. Sending Joe the link. But I just started the show. It's now. Give me a break, man. I told you it was 8:30. Oh my God. So I'm looking, let me go to my Twitter real quick and see what's going on here. We have Burbank. What happened in Burbank today? I've been to beautiful downtown Burbank. Breaking protests gather in front of Disney HQ in Burbank to boycott chanting Disney. They're boycotting Disney, ladies and gentlemen. And let me see here. Let me see if someone's speaking right now.
Well, for Disneyland, actually, I've been with them for quite a long time, and it's gotten very political, and it's gotten very hard to be who you are. It's gotten very hard to be someone who has conservative values someone who believes in the right to choose, somebody who believes that it's okay to stand up for righteousness. It is okay to stand up for righteousness. Any Disney cast members that are afraid to be bold, that are afraid to be courageous, stand up. It's okay. You're not alone. And
So they are boycotting Disney right now. Maybe me and June will come in and we'll boycott Disney. We'll come in and boycott Disneyland. I'm waiting for for Joey to show up, and maybe he will. Maybe I'll send in a link for June and we can talk about boycotting Disneyland. I don't think June has ever been to Disneyland. He's Canadian, so he's never been there. I'm sending him a link to see if he wants to talk about the boycotting of Disneyland. So I'm just looking. Someone just called Andy No evil. And yeah, I'm just here. Joey, how are you? How it's been a while since I've done a show.
Have we started a new transparency and merit?
Well, you know what? We've started a few things, and I'm trying to I'm trying to deal with my ego and knowing what my limitations are as far as my voice is concerned.
Now,
And
did my example of the three-legged table help you at all? Did you ever consider the three-legged table, or should I remind you?
I think I wanted to hit someone in the head with a three-legged table. So why don't you remind me of the three-legged table?
So you have your id, your super ego, and your ego, and they all should be working in unison. They all make us who we are. And when any of those three legs is broken, that three-legged table can no longer stand. It falls over. You need those three legs, minimum of three legs. And the ego oftentimes is the biggest culprit in breaking that table because they don't know how to process. They may undervalue what's being processed between the id and the superego, and combined they can make a complete person, and broken they can really um, highlight the flaws of a broken person.
How do you control that?
Well, first you have to explore and learn how the three interact, and how the ego doesn't just act alone. It does. It's not a independent. It's a feature of these three elements of our psyches. It's one of the most important and most valuable aspects of psychology because it does apply, and it is something that is useful in everyday life. But using the three, and especially using your superego and your id as checks against your ego. A lot of time people just think, well, just because I'm thinking it, it must be what I believe, and they say something before they think, and or act before they've thought it through, and that takes a lot of discipline. It takes a whole lot of discipline, and and I don't know, who the experts are in this. I mean, who has mastered this? Many people are flawed in some way or another, and something that happened early in life could really be impacting their id, and in return, they have an ego that not in balance, and so they can become an egomaniac or something to that effect. But when all three are working in unison, you have a far more balanced approach to dealing with everyday problems. I don't know if that makes sense, but as long if it doesn't make sense, I highly recommend you just look at definitions of what the superego and the id are, and think about how they interact with the ego, because none of those are independent of one another. They're all three, in fact, elements that should be working together.
Dawning, do you have anything
You and
to
your
add?
big ego, JP.
Whatever. I mean, my ego is not big. I've never been accused of being an egomaniac, but
You have a very huge ego, JP. Very huge.
I sometimes I act selfishly, and I don't think that's a problem. Now, please sit in your corner and shut up.
You're going to sit in the corner because your ego's too big, and you're going to go to a place where egomaniacs go, Dawning, or Sly.
I have a normal sized ego, Brian.
Maybe. Do you think I have a big ego, Sly?
You have probably not really much of ego at all. It doesn't seem like you really love yourself as much as you should.
That you sound like a complete egomaniac when you say that. Joey, do you have a comment on that?
If a lot of people tell you to love yourself more or treat yourself better, usually that's a sign that maybe something's not in balance. But our identity is our ID. Look it up. It's fascinating thing that it's a concept that a lot of people don't put together often enough. But your critical and moral thinking is analyzed by your superego, and all these things can be overridden by how you present and how you deal with things with your ego. And usually, it's a deficiency or a lack of maybe a lack of self-love or something lacking, and it can be the overcompensation. A big ego usually can be boiled down to maybe an over exertion, or making up for something that they
Now, a person, well, I was going to say a person that comes on my show quite often, Howard, seems to have a very big ego.
He's compensating for something, obviously.
Might be compensating for something.
Perhaps.
He's no stranger to problems in his life, like any other person.
That's true. For me, I think it's ego, and it's something I kind of want to ditch and just be a human being, a surviving human being, and a real human being, and that's what I'm struggling with now. And hopefully, people can join me within this struggle. I hear a lot of things that I think are a load of bullocks, but they probably think that I'm a load of bullocks too. Anyway, Joe, I'm gonna because I want to end the show. I want to take a shower and shave and just call it a night. Is there anything to add, Joey, before I end this show?
My recommendation is to go and read, even if it's just a Wikipedia on the. They do a good little analysis of the id, ego, and superego, and I think you can become with a more educated approach on it, and rather than just thinking about somebody being egomaniac, or you're lacking ego, or you use your ego too much. First, understand how your ego is behaving, and how you're behaving because of your ego could have a lot of underlying sets of conditions that the id and the superego are trying to help you correct, and ignoring those lets that three-legged table fall every time.
That is something to ponder on. Sly, do you have anything to add before I end this puppy?
Everyone needs an ego. Love yourself.
There we go. With that being said, hey guys, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Visit our website at transparencyandmerit.com. Visit our Rumble page as well. And by the way, I'm going to start deleting, or not deleting, but putting on private a lot of my shows. And they will be on my Rumble page. But I want to clean this up. So the stuff that's worthwhile and the other stuff I'm going to put on private. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.